raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear. My name's Dwayne, and this is
Mitch Stewart.
Mitch, what's going on?
Good.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the path in hockey. So we're going to dissect and discuss a little bit about how do you get from minor hockey onto junior hockey, prep hockey, the OHL, NCAA, professional hockey. How does that journey happen, and what steps do you need to take in order to attain that goal of moving up levels, and also pushing yourself on and off the ice, which is one of the obviously areas that we continue to talk about, pushing yourself both on and off the ice to attain those goals, reach those levels, and play at the highest level that you can. And Mitch, you've over the last little while, years that you've been in hockey, you've had a lot of parents ask you questions about, hey, what should my young guy or my young girl do, or what's the next step for them, and what's the journey, how does this whole process work, and some of the things that you've talked to them about.
Yeah, so usually when it comes to that, where you actually want to go and play, I'll say go talk to Dwayne. But when it comes to what I've seen a lot of players go through the rankings, and there's been guys that have gone from playing junior hockey to the NHL. So at the end of the day, too, I think that it's incredibly important to not get too hung up on where you're going to play and just focus on what you can control, and that's yourself. So your own development, focus on your training, focus on your skill development, and then, of course, there's an important piece of choosing where to play. But if you get too hung up on that, then I think it can pull you back. You know, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right things? Just do the right things. Keep working on your development. And then when it comes to the specifics of it, I say, go talk to Dwayne.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that. Well, you know what?
Lots of meetings.
Yeah, exactly. You bring up a good point, though, and I think a lot of times parents especially and players get too caught up in the process, and mentally they end up messing themselves up. I also feel that parents, we've talked about this in other episodes about different parts of hockey, but putting your young player around good people and getting a team of people around them, whether that's good strength coaches, good on-ice skills players, good coaches on their teams. And sometimes it's out of a player and a parent's hands where you're not going to pick the coach, but making sure that your son, daughter is in the right situation for them. And that may be playing AA rather than AAA, because they're going to get more of an opportunity to play. They're going to get more ice time. They're going to get more confidence. Maybe that's moving associations, which we see almost to a fault too much, where players think the grass is greener on the other side,
right,
and they make that move and they get to that other association, and
it's no different.
It's not. It's the same bag with different problems, right? Or the player that's searching for that top end team, the best team of the best, and they get there, and now they're one of 10, 12 best players, and they're not getting the opportunities that they wanted to get. Had they stayed in their home center, they probably would have been, one of the top 3 players on that team and would have had way better chance of promoting themselves and kind of moving on, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like when they get to the team or whatever it is, it's the same bag, different problems. But when people are always focused on the destination and not the journey, that the inspirational kind of quote, I guess, like usually when you get to whatever that destination is, it might not be exactly what you had expected. It's great, whatever, but if you don't enjoy the journey that got you there, what's the point?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really good point. And that journey for some players is really easy. You're really good. You play, we're in Ontario, so you play minor midget, you get drafted to the OHL, play in the OHL, get drafted to the NHL, play in the NHL. Couldn't be easier than that. But that's so few and far between. And the one thing I really have a hard time dealing with or hard time hearing is when parents come to me and say things along the lines of, I would just hope he maybe just gets a scholarship. Well, I think these parents realize how hard that is, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, your player's in Adam or Pee Wee. You know how long that journey is from that age. I know it sounds like 10 years maybe, but that's a long, long process. And if the players aren't doing the right things throughout that process, there's not a chance that they're going to get an opportunity to get a scholarship or get drafted in the OHL or play junior hockey or whatever it is, right? So I think for parents, it's figuring out that journey a little bit, and we'll get in depth about this a little bit more today, but figuring out what that journey is and how to baby step your way through that journey. A lot of players, and especially parents, want to sprint their way through that journey and high step and try to get, they're almost trying to fast forward through that journey, and you got to really take your time and go through that process. And again, going back to what I said a couple minutes ago, getting a team around you. So as players get older, it could be an advisor, an agent, a friend of the family that's gone through it, I'd strongly advise, asking that 57-year-old buddy that has played hockey 20 years ago to give you advice on how to get through the process, because if you're not in the game right now and you're not tapped into what's going on in minor hockey and junior hockey, it's changed so much even from when I played. It's very, very different to navigate through, and there's so many more options nowadays than what there was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So for a lot of players, they think, I want to play out in the NHL, or I want to push the game as far as they can, which is very, very, very attainable and possible. But there's 1,000 ways to get there. There's no straight line to where you want to go. There's so many ways. You may get diverted. You may switch directions a little bit on the way. But if you're driven and work hard and motivated and you're doing the right things, there's a lot of hockey to be played. And that doesn't mean the NHL, but there's a lot of hockey to be played if you decide.
So it sounds like that's kind of the bottom line, is driven and motivated throughout the process. And not at the very foundation of it all, you got to enjoy it, maintain a certain level of motivation, and be driven to take it wherever you can take it.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's not there, then it doesn't matter where you are.
No. And I want to be clear on this, but the player has to want it more than the parents. The parents want it more than the player. Forget it. It's done. And those parents might be able to push that player to a very high level. And you see it. There could be a very skilled, high-level player who kind of likes hockey, and mom and dad love hockey, or dad does or mom doesn't matter, and they push and push and push, and they may get that player to the NHL. But eventually, it's going to come crumbling down. And we see it at the NHL level where players just end up quitting, or they're a flop, a first-round flop, right? You hear terms like that. He always a flop. She was a flop. She never got a scholarship, whatever it was. But eventually, it's going to catch up. So the big piece there is the players got to want it more than the players got to want it more than the parents.
Right, for sure.
And that's something that I think, unfortunately, a lot of parents don't listen. So, and I'm a new parent, so you kind of get at the end of the day, all these parents want what's best for their kid, and there's no faulting that.
No.
And if you see potential in your kid, whether it's your young kid taking his first step, and you're like, come on, dude, seriously, take that step. You're kind of getting into it. And man, like Johnny's kid's walking already. Why aren't you walking, right? You get competitive at young. Yeah, if you're a competitive guy or a mom or dad, you get competitive. You want your kid to walk and crawl and eat with a spoon. I mean, that's all part of it. So now think of having a 15-year-old athlete who's an athlete, and they can play hockey. And some days they take that day off, and some days they're not good because they just don't care. That's hard on a parent. So I understand that part of it. And there's also a lot of politics that come into play. So as they're going up through the minor hockey system, there's dad over there that's paying that coach. There's so-and-so over here that goes golfing and has lunch with that GM or that, whatever it is. So there's different reasons why players get opportunities, for sure. But one of I think the most important reasons players get opportunities is they're hardworking, they're skilled. They've got all these little check marks that I always tell parents, if you're the top 6 on a team, you're probably going to make that team. If your son or daughter is the top 6, you're probably going to make that team. That middle 6, little political for sure. Bottom 6, 100% politics. Because if you and I are buddies and we golf together every Friday, and your little Johnny's trying out for my team, or your little Susie's trying out for my team, and I like you, she's kind of okay, maybe a little bit, but I know she's a good kid. I know you're a good dad. I like you. 100% I'm going to pick your kid over someone else's kid that I don't know, right? Or maybe I've heard some bad things about. Not a chance that player's going to get. Yeah, right? So, and that's just part of, and I mean, let's be honest, that's part of life. I mean, go out right now. You want to get a job? Go out right now and fire out 1,500 resumes, or call a couple buddies, make a couple calls, and see what works out better, the resumes or calling a couple buddies that know a couple people that can get you a job.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just life, But if we, let's say we take little Johnny, okay? So we'll take, actually, let's give him a better name than Johnny. Johnny's a pretty bad name. Let's give him, it's a good name, but it's a very common name. So let's give him a good, what do you think for a good name for our little mock player here?
Let's call him Carl.
Carl? Okay. Carl or Carla. You got to be
right.
That's
an easy one.
Yeah.
Goes both ways.
There you go. Okay. But yeah, let's say we had Carl, right? So Carl's an Adam player. So comes out of, let's say he's playing A in Adam. So kind of in the middle of the road, not AA, not AAA, but playing A hockey, which is fine. And Adam loves hockey. Carl's playing Adam. Okay, Carl's playing Adam. Yeah, and loves hockey. So he's probably 9 years old, 10 years old, loves hockey, works hard at it. And we'll say that Carl's very, very motivated. He's one of those kind of players that we see that's extremely, extremely motivated. So mom and dad are pretty open. They're pretty open to feedback. So basically we're painting a very nice picture right now. So we'll go with this nice picture that we've got. So let's say you meet Carl and his family as an off-ice professional. What advice would you give them at that 8, 9, 10-year-old range of what they should be doing?
I'd be feeding to whatever else he is interested in or she is interested in, to be honest. It doesn't need to be in the gym. Like, even if it was honestly anything else, and I think there should be a certain level of technical coaching on whatever that is too. And I'm not saying like, tons of professional one-on-one coaching in gymnastics or soccer or basketball, but if he's doing something else that's just building athleticism and building physical literacy, and if it happens to be the gym, like maybe he sees his favorite NHL player or OHL player and sees that they go to the gym and is interested in starting to learn on how to move in the gym and how to hinge at the hips or do a push-up or whatever, then that's a great place to start. But if he's like you said, 8 to 10 years old, like that's pretty young still, and I think it's important to just still follow curiosities a little bit. So like if a kid's curious about, I got a couple friends playing basketball, or I got a couple friends doing this or doing that, that would be my top advice. Like, they don't need to come to me in that case. Like 8 to 10, yeah, again, I mean, there's a couple 8 to 10-year-olds that I'll see, and I'll see them infrequently. We'll do a little bit of like basic body awareness type stuff. And if they're not into it, then that's fine.
Yeah.
And that does not going to dictate where they're at when they're 15, 16, 20, whatever. So, I mean, it's better that they make the decision and say, okay, I feel like to make it to the next level, the coach is saying I need to be a little bit stronger. I need to be a little bit more powerful. So I'm going to make the decision now to go and find a strength and conditioning coach who's going to be able to help me with those goals. So, yeah, it's totally, and I think they got to follow their curiosities. And at 8 to 10, that might not be the gym, which is fine.
No. And most 8 to 10-year-olds, let's be honest, they don't want to be in the gym.
No,
I mean, they think it's cool at the beginning, but you go in there for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, and no, that's not fun.
I'm not. No, God.
And I think that's even on the hockey side, like as a hockey coach or a skills coach for myself, I want kids to do other sports. I think it's very important, and it doesn't have to be anything organized. It could just be buddies going out and playing basketball or playing football or playing baseball or whatever that is. But having fun doing other sports and enjoying that part of life, basically, and being a kid, because we see kids now at 9, 10, 11 years old that are on the ice almost 3, 4, 5 times a day out of the season, not even in the season. And I think it's too much, and I think it's going to burn. And not a big guy. I don't promote burnout. I don't think burnout, if you love something, you can do it every day. You love building canoes. You're going to work on that canoe every day. You love it. You're not going to burn out. You love it.
It's totally individual.
And for myself personally, growing up, I played ball hockey. I love hockey every day. That's just what I liked. I loved it. Right. And going to your point, like, I look at some of these 7, 8, 9-year-olds right now. Like, I didn't start playing until I was 9. So, I mean, I was, parents nowadays would say, you're crazy. Don't even put them in hockey. It's a waste of time. Never gonna play. I loved it. So I fell in love with it. So I did it a lot. And it was awesome. It worked out well for me. But for some of these kids that come to us, even some of them, sometimes they'll meet players that aren't starting until they're 8, 9, 10. I'm like, perfect. That's fine. You're bigger. You're stronger. You're a little smarter. You're more athletic. You can catch up.
Arguably, I mean, it could be easier to, like, when you're totally green, no one's ever taught you how to skate properly. Yeah. Like, you could, when you have a little bit more strength and a little bit more body awareness, you may pick those patterns up faster, maybe.
For sure.
It's, you're certainly not at that age behind.
No, I mean, technically, I guess you are, but you can catch up.
Technically.
Right? And there are some 8, 9, 10-year-olds that are massively motivated and love it, and they want to do hockey every day, which again is great. So on the skill side for us, I tell parents a lot of times, like, you can come into our training center and do shooting or do skating treadmills, or you can just shoot pucks for free at home, do workouts at home, do push-ups at home. Like, I always try to say to young players, try to do something every day that's going to make you better. That could be picking a salad over French fries at McDonald's. That could be going for a walk instead of getting your dad to drive you to the corner store. Like little things that are just, I'm doing my part today or this hour just to be a little bit better. Yeah. I'm going to be a little more athletic.
And then the other thing too is, and that I kind of touched on it a little bit before, but if you're going to, I think at that age, it's important to instill the whole, if you're going to do it right. Like, if you're doing homework, are you looking in the back of the book and trying to find the right answers, or are you trying to do it? Yeah. If you're taking shots, do you have a little bit of an idea of maybe what you're trying to work on for your shot, or are you just taking shots? So, and if you want to get better at hockey or shooting, I mean, you're going to get a lot better if you have maybe 1 or 2 things that you're trying to actually work on. Like, there's actually a mental process behind it, and it's not just swinging the stick at the puck.
Which is a great...
Same thing with push-ups. Like, anything. Really, I think any movement or anything. I think there should be some sort of mental process behind what you're doing more than just the motions, Yeah. And we've talked about that before.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, like, obviously, I know a lot of the parents out there are always, hockey's so expensive, and you get in the equipment aspect alone, the registration fees, then you talk about extra training, extra on ice, extra, it's a lot. It does get to be a lot. But again, there's this thing called the internet. It's got a ton of videos, ton of good stuff on it. And players can learn a good technique on shooting and not waste their time in the backyard
That's
just shooting a bunch of pucks, but working on a little bit of technique stuff, whether it's just their hand positioning. That's all they're worried about, and how they cup the blade or whatever it is, but working on a couple little things and practicing smart rather than just practicing.
Exactly.
Right?
That's all I'm saying. Not saying you got to go hire a coach.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's other ways for sure.
So now let's say that Carl plays Adam that year, A hockey, which is great. And Adam wants to make that jump to AA next year in, let's say, Pee Wee. So we'll jump up. He's major Adam, going to go into Pee Wee. So now he's 11 years old. The process of getting into AAA at Adam and Pee Wee is hard because Adam is the first year that in our area, and some of the other areas it's a little bit later, but in our area, Adam's the first year that you're going to play really competitive as far as AAA, AA. And that's where it becomes political a little bit. And a lot of parents feel like if I don't make that AAA team in my first year, Adam, I'm done.
You're off the
right?
list.
I'm done. And that's not the case. I mean, there's a lot, plenty of examples of kids that have made it in midget or Bantam, right? Which is a bit longer, a little further away, but it can be done. So for Carl, it comes to me I played A hockey this year. I really want to make AA. And most parents do this. It's kind of, let's say it's, I don't know, March, and tryouts are in April, right? So you got like 3 weeks to a month to prep this kid. You can do it. You can start working on it. But realistically, is Carl going to make that jump to AA or AAA? Probably not, right? But my advice would be next year, work on your skating all year. Work on your shooting all year. And not every day, but maybe once a week, twice a month, you come in or you work on it at home, doesn't matter. But work on it with somebody that's going to help you develop. So as you get a little bit older into that 10, 11, 12 age bracket, now you can shoot a puck properly. You're a little bit strong. You're strong enough to get, your skating techniques getting more sound. Now I think it's important to start, if the kid still loves the game and loves hockey and wants to push it, now I think it's important to start on the skill side for hockey. Now I think it's important to start getting that proper technique, working on that skating. And not to say it wasn't important at the younger ages, but now you almost want to get into smaller groups, more specific for that player, rather than just going to big group stuff. If they're elite, if they want to be elite, if a player comes to me and says, I'm an A hockey player. I love being an A hockey player, and I want to play A. Awesome. Fine, yeah. That's amazing. Or I'm house league. I love it. Great. Then I would say go to a big group program with 20 kids or 30 kids in it. It's more affordable. You're going to get way more bang for your buck for the level that you're at and where you want to play. Mm-hmm. If you tell me you want to play AAA one day, then these are the things I think you got to do. And then I think same thing if we're talking about Carl trying to be an elite player, loves the game, parents are into it, they're going to try to open doors for him. Then, for the off-ice piece, as they get into that 10, kind of 11, 12-year-old, what kind of things would you have them, what kind of advice would you give them for off-ice?
So you've made a really good point, I think, there with like, if they're playing AA and want to play triple or single to double, then usually they're pretty motivated. They want to come in the gym and they want to start to learn stuff. So the way that we always do it, though, and I think I've said this in some other of our podcasts, is they come in and we have a minimum of kind of 5 more on the one-on-one side of things and just teach them very basic movement patterns. So whether that's just what is your spine inflection, so when you round it, what's your spine extension, where's a neutral spine. So if you don't know where your spine is in space, none of those positions are necessarily bad or the best or whatever, but if you don't know where it is, that's where you can get yourself into trouble. And then how to hinge the hips, how to lunge in different patterns, how to lunge with your alignment between your foot, your knee, your hip. Yeah. So you're not twisted all over the place. So it really is just the kind of very basic body weight movement patterns. And then after they progress through that, and that doesn't take a long time. We get through that stuff and then we'll talk about what their goals are, where they feel that they need to work on. We'll do a bit of an assessment and we'll say, okay, so from my side, I saw this, this, and this. Like we did vertical jump and it was 14 inches. Some of the, I think that it would be a good goal for us to try to get that up to 18 or whatever it is. Everyone's a little bit different. And then we start to make goals that way. And I try to make the process as back and forth as possible because, again, the off-ice side, it needs to be directly related to the on-ice. We're not trying to turn them into bodybuilders. We're not trying to turn them into Olympic weightlifters or powerlifters or whatever. So it needs to be, and they need to feel that everything we're doing is directly related to their goal, which is not to get bigger biceps, but to perform better on the ice. So we have a really active communication and make sure that everything we're doing, we both feel and we both understand what we're trying to move towards and how that's going to impact the process, for the on-ice piece.
No, that's great. And for parents that are listening or players that are listening or even coaches, this is not a 365-day-a-year commitment every single day, right? It's something that could be periodized throughout the year where you got certain times of the season where maybe you're doing more or less. I mean, during the season, maybe it's just doing push-ups and some squats at home once in a while. Like, it doesn't have to be anything where we don't want to sound crazy that these kids have to be little robots that are always working on their shot and working on their skating, and they're kids. So they're still going to the jungle gym with their buddies. They're still going to the schoolyard and playing basketball and doing all that kind of fun stuff as well. But if they are serious about hockey, now they're starting to probably cross-train a little bit. So, for instance, maybe at school, this little, Carl loves track and field. But, he's picking the distance runs or the sprint runs because he wants to get better at sprinting and quicker for hockey or whatever it is. But some of these things start to play into, I want to do this because it's going to make me, I want to do cross-country running because I'm going to be in better shape. And that's going to make me better for hockey, right? So you're starting to have those thoughts if hockey is your number one sport. If you love all the other sports and you love just competing and having fun, awesome. It's amazing. It's great.
Well, I mean, actually, some people that we've made almost the most or a lot of progress with come in sometimes less frequently, to be honest. Like at that age.
Yeah.
Like, because it is very, I mean, they're still, like you said, they're still going to the jungle gym, still having fun. We'll come in once a month and maybe give them some homework. And every time I see them, you can tell if they've been doing it. And I mean, we've seen some massive changes with literally once a month and then some homework. And then some people coming in once a week and not doing much between those sessions and tons of progress. So, I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not a everyday 365 days of the year type of program. Especially,
And the homework piece is huge. If a player is going to go home and maybe work on their flexibility a bit or work on their shot, and they come back in 2 weeks later to work with you or come back 2 weeks later to jump on the ice with me, it's noticeable if they've been working on their shot for 2 weeks. Even if it's 3-4 times a week or twice a week, noticeable. Mm-hmm. But I tell parents this too. I'm like, it's like you go to piano lessons as a parent, and every week or every second week you go to piano lessons, but you don't do anything in between piano lessons. I took piano lessons as a kid. If I didn't practice, my piano teacher knew right away. Yeah. And she would give it to me. Right? So we needed to practice. And I, now I look back on it. When I did practice, I was way better the next lesson. Right? So it's not rocket science.
Yeah, all these rules are pretty universal.
Right. It's called life. Yeah. So I think, those are the messages we got to send as coaches, being like, we're going to do this for an hour today, but you got to go home and practice this. You got to go home and work on this. Right? And I think that's where they're going to get the most amount of benefits. Knowing how to do it correctly, getting that correction when they're in, getting that good coaching, and then when they're at home, wherever they're doing it, they're thinking about it. They're trying to improve steadily.
And then and then they have to take responsibility for it. You're not there, make sure you move this or do this a little bit differently. It's better that they have that alone time almost where they have to really think about, okay, what did he say about this? It makes them think a little bit more. Yeah. And I think that in itself is actually
huge.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. It helps a lot.
For sure. So now let's say we've got Carl. Now Carl's jumping into Bantam. So he's getting into that kind of 13, 14-year-old kind of range. And he makes the AA team, which is great. So he makes the AA team, makes that step up, worked hard at getting there. AA and AAA are massively different. And a lot of parents will say, it's just, we're almost there. It's far away. And I really want to stress this because the high-end AAA kids are way different than the high-end AA kids. Not to say that a high-end AA kid could not play on that AAA team, or that high-end AAA player lower-end AAA player couldn't get bumped down at AA. It happens all the time. But the kids that are super motivated and ultra-motivated at AAA are very, very, very different than the kids in AA. Overall, kind of stereotyping. But in AA, you do have some kids that can definitely play AAA. And the kids that are motivated in AA and work hard and really do the things we're talking about right now, they're the ones that are going to get that opportunity to play AAA down the road. And I know Bantam, a lot of parents think, we're done. Every year in Bantam and midget, there's always a couple changes on teams. Not a lot, but there's always a couple. And if a player works hard and kind of does what they need to do in order to improve, guy, girl, doesn't matter, they're going to get opportunity. And I think even on the female side of the game, I mean, we run a training center that has a skating treadmill, a shooting area, a gym, everything. For every 10 to 15 boys we probably have one girl. Is that about right?
That's probably about right, yeah.
Right? And that's been like that for years. We've had a lot of girls come through and a lot of real high-end girls that have gone on to play scholarships. And even in the summer, we have a lot of high-end players that come in, which is awesome, with college or junior or pro. And we've got some real good girls that come in, but not a lot compared to how many guys we have.
The ratio is definitely,
right?
Really weighted.
So if you have a daughter that's playing and that's pretty good and likes it, and she does a little bit of extra, it's amazing how much more of a jump they can have, or how much more of an edge they can have on their competition just by doing that little bit extra. And boys, it's way more competitive just because there's more boys playing.
People doing it, yeah.
So they need to really hone their skills and get better and really focus on the little areas that they need to get better at. But if Carl's playing AA, still motivated, still focused, then that work still got to get put in order to make that jump to AAA, and probably even more work now to get to that AAA level. And when you're talking about a Bantam player now, as they're coming into the gym, what are some things that you'd be focusing on with them now that they're Bantam AA and they really want to make that AAA team the next year?
So it's tough because it obviously is always dependent on what they've been doing in the past. So let's say that they've already kind of came in and we've done a little bit of kind of just basic flexibility work, basic motor pattern kind of work. We would start to get them doing a little bit of strength training. And when I say that, I'm not saying we're getting them to like do max squats or anything like that, but they're going to be maybe starting to do a little bit of like maybe light kettlebell work in the squat patterns and lunge patterns and stuff like that. And then we'll start to try to build their aerobic system up. So we'll start to do more kind of conditioning type circuits, and always really focused on the technical aspects of things, not letting them start to cheat when they start to get tired. And that type of thing. But again, it's challenging to say for sure because there's so many different athletes that I work with at that age and younger and older. And sometimes, like, honestly, people are coming in at 18 and they're doing things that are less advanced, quotes, than maybe a 15-year-old who's been coming in a little bit longer and has a little bit better awareness of what's happening in the on the off-ice side of things. But yeah, so it's that's where it starts to get a little bit murky almost. It's just everyone progresses differently, and we need to adjust based on where they're at and what their goals are. Some people we do more cardio with, some we do less, some we do more power training with, some we do less. But it always starts with those fundamentals, and that's what we keep coming back to. So it depends how advanced they are that way, and then what the ratios are between endurance, power, strength, mobility, and then we kind of make our decisions based on that. So actually, the older they get, the more specific it needs to be.
For sure.
I'd say that would be kind of the bottom line.
And even on the ice, it's the same thing on the ice. I mean, as they get older, let's say in Bantam, there's got to be a plan for a player, especially if they're going to do privates or small groups where we can really focus in and hone in on certain areas. But if it's a defenseman, we're working on different things than if it's a forward. If it's a forward who's got a great shot, good speed, but not great hands, they're going to play a different role, a different position, a different style of game than that player that's got real good hockey sense and real good hands. So you're developing, the player that's a real good skater, got a good shot, is going to be kind of just an up and down hard nose. I'm not going to work with that player on how to toe drag a defenseman and go bar down on his backhand. I can teach them that for sure, but is he going to pull that out in a game? Is she going to pull that out in a game? Probably not at Bantam and Midget. They could eventually, but to make that AAA jump, let's focus on continuing to work on your speed, getting your head up to be able to create some stuff with that speed, working on your shot, how to let your shot go properly. We're still going to work on hands and all that kind of stuff, but you're not going to turn a player like that into a dangler in a year, right? They're going to kind of fit in their box. Now they can expand their box, but they're going to be that type of player a little bit. And for a parent coming into a skills coach, and I've asked parents this, they've worked with certain skill coaches. Well, what's the plan? Like, you've worked with this this other skills coach. Did he have a plan for your kid? Well, no, we just went out and just did sessions. And I'm like, did he ever talk to you about what type of player your player is and what's the plan moving forward? What the things they're going to be working on? No, like we just go out. It's
pretty important stuff.
Especially as they're getting older, and not only that, you're paying pretty good money for small group sessions or private sessions. And the one father I was talking to I said, well, so you just take all your retirement money and just give it to an investment guy and just say, do whatever you want with it. I just want to retire one day. Like, no, you don't. You kind of have a bit, some of us do, I guess, but you want to have at least tell the guy, this is my plan. I'd like to retire by this age, or I want to stop working. I'll have a part-time job, whatever. But you have a bit of a plan, hopefully, on what you want to do with your kids for school, for whatever it is, right? So this is one of our most important commodities, our children. This is what we care about. This is what we want to see do as well as they can, but we don't have a plan for them. So I think it's very important for parents to hold coaches, strength coaches, skills coaches accountable a little bit. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars an hour to work with my son, daughter.
What are we working on?
What's the plan? What are we doing? Or maybe I want him to really get better at this, this, and this. I don't see that. I know you wanted to work on his quick feet, but his edging's terrible. So I got to work on his edging before I can get to his quick feet. That's a good skills coach being like, we got to go to A before we can go to C. And making sure that there's a plan. Just like you, I want him to be able to squat and be really strong. Well, he can't hip at the hinges. He can't even bend properly. So let me work on that first, and then we'll get to there.
Right.
And some of the parents don't like hearing it.
And then even as in hockey, so I mean, you got your forwards, your defensemen, and stuff like that. But within those positions, every player is not the same. And being able to identify that that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
being able to identify what's your role going to be as you're a forward, but what does that role actually look like? And I don't think a lot of players even maybe understand that.
Well, and they don't, and it's up to their coaches or their skills coaches or whoever that group of people I told you about that are surrounding, right? That we know we're kind of a part of that with a lot of players. It's up to them to help those players identify it. Some of the players know it. Like, for instance, you've got a Bo Horvat and Travis Konechny, both first-round picks to the NHL, both super high-end, both very good players on their team, very different players. Bo's big, strong, move people around, no problem. Smart player, heady player, right? Konechny's dirty, fast, got a bit of an edge, got great little skill on him. Like, he's way different players, right? But a lot of people look at him like, oh, both playing in the NHL, but they're both doing really well. Well, they both got rated on the same points. Night and day players. Like, when you dissect it, you know?
Yeah, and at what age do you think, like, where does that start to get, like, identified pretty, like, yeah, I mean, I imagine there's some flexibility on that.
Yeah.
But, like, where does it maybe start to, like, commonly blend in that direction? Or
going back to Carl, right? Like, you can start to see little pieces of a player probably at, like, realistically, some people will say, oh, by 8, I knew he was a defenseman. That's a little bit young. You know, some of these kids, man, at 8, honestly, are high end. Like, they're good, right? And a lot of times these good players are really good. And mom and dad are basically just waiting to punch their ticket to the NHL. And that's such the wrong way to go about it. That kid is so far from the NHL. It's crazy. And at 8 years old, he may plateau at 5'6". I don't know, right? He may get to 5'9". So let's 5'11", whatever. So let's teach that player how to play at whatever size he's at as he's coming through the system. And then when he's in Bantam and midget, you're gonna have a good idea if this kid's gonna sprout or get bigger or whatever's gonna happen. So then you kind of reassess. But realistically, by Pee Wee Bantam, you got a real good lock on what type of player that player is. Now, does that mean that player's stuck? No, they can always expand their skill set depending on how hard they want to work, right? And that's the key thing is, you know, I got great speed, I've got good shot, I've got decent hands, but my biggest thing is I'm physical, I play strong, I'm good with the puck as far as like protecting it, using my body, and I got speed. Well, let's hone in on that stuff. Let's make you really good at what you do there. Continue to work on hands, continue to work on deception, all that stuff, but that's what's going to be your bread and butter, and then we can add other things around there, right?
So basically, too, what you're saying is that, say at that Pee Wee age or whatever, it's important for those players to kind of even understand where their strengths lie, and then it allows them to kind of build on that. Whereas if they have no idea even really what part of the game they're good at or what role they're playing, like, it's kind of makes it a little bit more challenging to expand that box.
It's huge.
You don't even know where the walls of the box are.
That's it, right? And some players are fortunate because, you know, you look at a player, for instance, who we were just talking about a player today who, if he gets a chance at the OHL level to play in the top 6, so top 6 forward would be your top 6 players, obviously very skilled for the most part, he would be phenomenal. He's very smart. He can complement a real high-end scorer by getting on the puck. Really, really good player. But he could also probably play a bottom 4 or a bottom 6, sorry, because he's smart enough. He's very, 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 you know, he's got good attention to detail. He's good in the D zone. He'd be an awesome 3rd or 4th line player and be very valuable there. So you have some outliers that are good. Just they'll play. They
can adapt.
They'll morph to anything. Yeah. They'll fit in anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But then you have some other players that are very strong in their characteristics. Like even like going back to Travis Konechny, you cannot put Travis Konechny on a 3rd or 4th line for very long because he wants to score. Mm-hmm. So you see him right now with Philly. He'll blow the zone a little bit. He'll cheat a little bit. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But on the 3rd or 4th line, if he's honing the zone defensively, he's going to cheat a bit and he's going to get caught and they're going to get scored on. So there's a fine line there, right? And you put skilled players like that with other skilled players, and it's fun to watch. You put real skilled players with other players that don't have that much skill, it's really hard to watch because they get frustrated, they get pissed off, it's not working, the players aren't where they're supposed to be, you know?
Like there's a bit of a different game being played. Like at each line is playing a different,
Yeah.
So
I mean, you play with a guy like Crosby and you're not getting to the right places, you're not playing with Crosby very long. Right. He'll get you off that line pretty quick.
Right.
So the guys that play with him on his line, they understand the game pretty good. They're pretty intellectual players, and they're going to places that they know he's going to be given the puck to, or that he wants to get the puck at. Like you know what I mean. So you got to have a certain level of IQ to be able to play with those kind of guys, or you got to be able to open ice. So if you're a real strong winger that's just real simple, get the puck, get it deep, but bang bodies and open up ice a little bit by creating space, then that's valuable too, right? So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but at the end of the day, you got to understand what kind of player you are, and then really figure out how you can be the best at that player, and eventually morph out of it a little bit if you need to. But that's, I think, step one.
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
developing a realistic perception as to like who you are as a player, or even like, and I'm amazed sometimes just on the off-ice side of things. Like some of these guys, like Ole Matt is a first example that pops in my head. But when you ask him something about him, not necessarily even on the ice, but like your nutrition, like he'll rhyme off like the percentage of macronutrients he has, like, or how many liters of water he drinks in a day. Whereas that's not common in all NHL players. But he knows that, like, it's crazy how self-aware like a guy like that is. And I think on the ice, probably at that level, most of them have, like, they know who they are, obviously, right?
Yeah, and Ole's an interesting one because Ole works so hard. You know that. I know that. Like, he's awesome, man, and he's so fun to work with. But he also understands what he is. He's not a Letang. Right? He plays with Letang. Letang's quick, fast, dirty, real good skill. He'll do spinoramas. That's not Ole Mata. He knows that. Ole Mata is a very smart defenseman. He's not the fastest defenseman in the league. He knows that, so he tries to make smart decisions, take better lines to pucks, things like that. But the thing that's got him to where he is right now is he just works, and he outworks so many guys that are probably a little bit better than him. But
and for anyone listening, like, you don't understand the level of at which how much he outworks.
It's crazy.
Like his advice by a lot of coaches I know at the NHL level was like, you got to taper back. Like you're gonna. Not mentally burn yourself out, but your body can't take this forever. Like you're, riding the bike for 2 hours or something after a tough practice.
Yeah. No, he's special. I mean, he really is. And he's got that, he's got that intangible of that work ethic and what he's, he's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
awesome
a pleasure to work with, obviously. So now the last little bit here, let's say Carl now he's going in a midget, or let's say Major Bantam, and he makes the AAA team. So he makes the AAA team in Major Bantam, made some good gains from Adam all the way to Bantam. Now he's playing on that AAA team. He's one of those, 15 players or skaters on that team. So now even more specific than what it was in Bantam. Kind of following the same kind of lines, but really honing in on his skills and continuing to work on his skills on the ice. And now maybe more specifically, we pick 3 or 4 different pieces. So for instance, he's got to work on quick starts. Got to really focus on quick starts. Really got to work on his stride technique. His heel kicking still a little bit, or which he shouldn't be if he's been working with a skills coach that long. But let's say he is still honing in on a couple little things. And now high level stuff like his release has got to get way quicker on his shot. His one timer's got to be down pat so he can one time pucks on the fly. So little things like that, picking up backhand passes, right? So we hone in on some real intimate skills like that we focus in on, a minor midget player playing AAA that's got an opportunity to play higher level. And then in the gym for you,
that's where even like at that time we can start, and this can happen earlier too, but where this relationship with having the on ice and the off ice pretty close, like we're talking right now, we talk about, players and what they need to work on. Whereas if a player's having a hard time getting lower or getting, even just opening their hips to get into a position they need to be in on the ice, then we can talk about that and we can look at the off-ice side of things and kind of dial into more specific things so that we're actually tying into each other more closely and what we're working on. And again, that comes back into, it's all around like the athlete, like whatever they need to work on them. We're all working together, including that person, obviously. Like, you know what I mean? Which is, I think, the most important thing, that we all understand that we're all on the same page, and
Yeah, no, and that's the biggest thing. Even at Pee Wee and Bantam and Midget, the athlete has to buy into what we're telling them. Yeah. Right? If they're not buying into it, then forget it. Or the parents, if they're not buying into it, then forget it. And it happens to us sometimes where, well, what if I go to so and so over here, I'm not going to be working on forwards edging. I'm going to be able to work on toe drags and all. I want to go there. Well, go ahead, no problem. But guess what? You're still shitty on your edges, right? Yeah. Like that problem hasn't been fixed. So
and that's I think coming back to like your perception of yourself. Like if you're like, I don't think they're that bad. Well, every coach has said that you need to improve on this, and we see it, and you know what I mean. But I don't think it's that bad. It's that like being aversive to what you need to. Yeah, what you actually need to work on. Yeah, we see that like a lot.
Right. Yeah,
and I think that starts at it. Like that's where the young age, it's important to start. Just like if you're going to do it right. That's the bottom kind of thing. Like if you're gonna work on this, well, then just work on this. Whether it's in school or whatever. Like, it's easy to just walk away from the things that are challenging.
For sure, and I think it's also trusting who you're working with. Totally. Yeah. If you're investing time and money into somebody, then trust what they're doing. If you don't trust what they're doing, then clearly go somewhere else. Yeah. And that's no problem. If you're with us and you want to go somewhere else, that's fine. If you're with so-and-so and you want to leave, up to you, but trust. And if you don't trust, ask yourself why. So is it the coach that's the problem, or is it you that's the problem? Because you see your son or daughter a different way than that coach does. And my son should be a high-end player. My daughter should be a high-end player. And this coach is still working on one-legged pushes with them. Well, I want them to work on one-timers. And, well, if their body positioning isn't correct and they can't get to the puck on time, they're not in the right spot, I don't care how good their one-timer is, they're not going to let a lot of them go. But if we get them there at the right time, we can work on their skating a little bit more, their edging, whatever it is. Now they're in position to make those plays a lot more.
Well, and if you have all the building blocks that are for a certain skill, I mean, you learn the next step faster.
Yeah.
Like you can learn probably a skill that may be, say, 2 blocks ahead of where you really should be. But it's going to take longer to learn it. And you probably could have learned the other 2 pieces on the way in the amount of time it took you to learn that thing that you weren't really quite ready for.
Yeah.
And it's probably not as clean and crisp as it could have been if you took the proper steps all the way up.
Well, I mean, if you built a house and you kind of just did a bit of the foundation and started the walls and then went back and finished the foundation, like, come on, it's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing, exactly.
You need to build a proper foundation on a player, whether it's off ice, on ice, basketball, football, doesn't matter. And it's going to make for much better athlete down the road if they're built the right way from the ground up, basically. Now, once that minor midget, let's say Carl gets in that minor midget AAA and he's playing at the highest level he can play at that age. This is where it gets crazy. So this is where there's a lot more, unfortunately, a little bit of pressure on the kids, and the parents probably eat most of that burden because they're at the rinks and there's trench coats in the stands and black jackets with clipboards and all the teams are scouting these kids and putting them on lists and all this stuff. So it gets super cumbersome. And one of the talks I have with a lot of our kids that are going through the OHL draft in our area or the WHL draft or the Q or whatever it is, right? Because that's kind of the first milestone at 15, which is crazy young. But at 15, that's the first milestone where they're actually getting really evaluated. Yeah, there's rankings when they're younger and Bantam and whatever. But at the end of the day, this is kind of the biggest stage that they're going to be on so far in their career as far as young players. But they're 15, man. So it's crazy how young they are. But I had this talk with a lot of the players that you're going to go through this draft, and no matter what happens, if you're a high-end kid, top 2-3 rounds, it's different. It's a different path. And we said it earlier, you're kind of probably get drafted, have a really good chance of playing in the OHL, and then see what happens from there. If you're middle to late rounds, then it's a different path for you. So now middle to late rounds, now maybe you're looking at junior B, but you got to keep in mind that junior B and junior C only have 1 to 2 16-year-old cards. So that draft year, the kids that get drafted or have potential getting drafted, that following year, there's only 2 cards on one junior B team for them. Out of a 22-man roster, there's 2 cards. It's crazy. And then for junior C, same idea. And then what about the kids that don't get drafted, right? So now what do? So they could potentially try to play junior B or junior C, which is a good option. They could try to play midget AAA. Same with all the kids that did get drafted. 100% could play midget AAA, which is great. And a really good option for them. For anybody, whether you're drafted or not drafted, midget AAA's they got really good programs. It's a good league. And now there's a midget draft, right? Yeah. So these kids have a chance of getting drafted. Kind of, let's say the kids that were missed, or maybe a little bit of a later bloomer, then they get a chance to get drafted the following year, potentially, in that major midget draft, which is great. And it gives a little bit more clout to that major midget as well. That league has a little more opportunity for these kids to get scouted and get looked at, right? And then there's also the whole opportunity of prep school and going to play prep school hockey. So U16 program or U18 program. And there's a bunch in Ontario. There's a bunch out west. There's some Quebec side. There's some tons in the States. Yeah. And that's another unbelievable option. A lot of parents right away, when you say prep, like, oh my God, it's $40,000, $50,000, which it is. The price tag is that. There is academic money at a lot of the schools. There is scholarship money for good athletes, for good players. So there is a way to get that price tag down. But again, if Carl, let's say our Carl, if he's let's say he's a mid to late rounder or doesn't get drafted, well, what are his options, right? So when you go to prep school, you get a chance to work out 3-4 times a week, depending on your schedule. You're on the ice pretty much every day. So every day, I mean 4 to 5 days a week plus games.
Plus your games, yeah.
And obviously you're in a private school setting academically, which is nice because hopefully you're gonna smaller classes. You'll be able to do well and keep your academics high for what those other options are going to be down the road. If you pick the midget route, it's great. You can stay in your local city or area. The one thing with midget, though, is you're normally practicing once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, and then a couple games. There's usually never much of a workout program tied to that program. And there might be, but rarely is there skill development tied to that. A lot of the prep schools do have skill development or have skills days or things like that. So, you're kind of taking a step back, a lot more affordable, obviously, to play minor hockey again and midget. And then if you are lucky enough to get a junior B card or junior C card, it's great. But now, again, you're looking at 1 practice, maybe 2 a week, sometimes 3 in this area anyway. I know out west they practice 4 or 5 days a week. It's kind of like an NCAA. It's pretty legit. Yeah. And then workouts in junior B in this area, and junior C, I mean, that's on your own. So most guys don't work out, or a little bit here and there.
It's tough too, because when you get there, so if you're one of the 16-year-olds, you got some players that maybe even played in the OHL, right? And that by the time they're playing there, they're good players, but they're not super interested in really the development outside of it, like from what I've seen.
No, for sure.
And those are kind of your leaders, I guess you could say, too, to some point. They sometimes it can just change your mindset a little bit, I think. I mean, as long as you got to go in with the intention that you still want to continue to develop throughout the year and make a plan for that stuff that's not involved.
Well, and I've obviously dealt with a lot of players that have gone on to play junior C or junior B at 16. And my first piece of advice is you're going to love it. It's going to be fun. Yeah. A good bunch of guys, but don't follow some of those 20-year-olds or 19-year-olds that are
They're
done.
in a different spot.
Yeah.
They're in a different spot.
But some of these young kids get tugged that way, and they're, going to parties a little bit more and, kind of following those players a little bit more, where if you're going to play junior B or junior C and your goal is really to push hockey as far as you can. So whether that's college hockey, NCAA, CIS in Canada, whatever that is, you've got to stay focused on what you're doing. So if you're going to play B or if you're going to play midget AAA, then pick your spots when you're out partying and doing those kind of things, and really still focus on training and skills. And again, it could be shooting pucks at home. It doesn't have to be anything organized. It can be, but really focus on getting better that entire season, right? Don't just play hockey. And because now you look at the top end players at every level, they're doing extra. They're all doing extra. And it doesn't have to cost a ton of money. It could be just doing stuff at home, but they're doing extra. So if you really want to play C or play B, or you get that opportunity, midget AAA, put together a plan for you that you're going to do all year and focus on getting better all year so that you can make that jump the following year to maybe you want to go play junior A tier 2, or maybe you want to jump to that junior B team, or whatever that next plan is at 16. So if Carl's done his midget, let's say his midget or minor midget AAA year, doesn't get drafted or is a late round pick, then he's going to have some decisions to make, right? And there's a lot of decisions, or there's a lot of options, I should say. So again, just to recap quick, there's midget AAA, which is your local area, kind of minor hockey, which is great. And there's a draft out of that now too for those older players. There's your prep school option, which is broad, and there's $60,000 schools to $20,000 schools. There's some in Canada, some bunch in the States, but they do get heavily scouted for NCAA and a lot of different opportunities for junior and junior A tier 2 or different junior leagues. And then the other option is going to be your junior C or your junior B. So if you get an opportunity to get one of those 2 cards, then that's obviously a very great option for some of these young kids. And I think, let's say Carl goes down any one of those 3 paths, prep school's got a lot of that stuff already built into it. So you got some skill development. Usually you're going to be on the ice a lot. You got your workouts tied into it, and your academics are all there. Whereas, let's say you had a player come to you in the midget or the midget or junior. What kind of advice would you give them on working out? What kind of a plan would you put together for them for their season?
We could sit down and look at their schedule first, and then figure out which days they could actually come into the gym. Give them some like a good warm-up routine and a good kind of cool-down routine they can do at home, letting like foam rolling, stretching, that kind of thing. Because really, in-season training is totally different than the off-season. Even when you come into the gym, you're not like killing yourself every time. But just getting your body moving through a variety of different positions when you're spending most of your time on the ice it keeps you healthy. That's kind of at the end of the day what our goal is throughout the season is maintain strength, maintain power, and keep everything healthy. Yeah. So we'd sit down, look at the schedule, and try to figure out a plan for that. And that would be either for the major midget or kind of junior B, junior C guys. And I mean, in most places they have probably a training facility that would be able to help facilitate something like that. It's just taking the responsibility to go out and try to figure it out. Whereas, like you said, at the prep school, it's already kind of built in. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, which is a nice feature for sure. And for parents that can afford it, or if you get good scholarship money to go to one of these prep schools, talking to some of the kids that just come back for their March break from prep. I mean, one of the schools, I think it's Salisbury down in, I think it's right around Boston area, but they were basically almost 10 commits to Division I off that team, which is crazy. You're talking grade 11, grade 12s that are already committed.
So there's a lot of opportunity for these players to get looked at and have an opportunity to get commits or whatever from NCAA or, and even Division 1 or Division 3 is a great opportunity. CIS now has some money. So now let's say Carl's gone through gone through minor hockey, played midget AAA. Now he's got a chance to play junior. Now the decisions are a little bit less because now you're playing junior. So now you're going to try to continue to stay in the junior loop. Now, what are the best leagues to get scholarships out of? Because if you take the OHL route, and let's say you sign and you play a game, exhibition game, then you're going to be, your eligibility is basically a bit messed up for NCAA, right? So if you play one exhibition game in the OHL or any of the CHL, so the Q, the Dub, or the OHL, your eligibility is pretty messed up. So if you decide to go to the OHL route, no problem. Let's say you play a year of OHL. For the most part, the standard is a year of service, you're going to get a year of schooling. A year of schooling is kind of tuition and books, I think it is.
Right.
Which is not bad. I mean, it's actually a real good, it's really, really good. And that's an awesome, super viable option for a lot of players where they go play 4 years in the O, get 4 years of schooling paid for. Now they go to a CIS team, get a little bit of money from the CIS team out of scholarship.
Plus have their scholarship.
And their OHL scholarship. So it's actually a great model, right?
And we've seen lots of players go that route.
Tons,
Get a great undergrad and do a master's or whatever. And
And some go on to like do their masters. Like for instance, Colin McDonald with the Knights, went to school there, played hockey there. And now he's an assistant GM with the Knights. Amazing.
Yeah.
Still in hockey, has a great gig. It's great. Other players have played CIS and gone on to play pro after. A bunch of them have gone on to play East Coast League, AHL a little bit, Europe for sure, right? So there's a ton of options there. But if you're looking at, so that's kind of the OHL route, and then obviously most guys, when you make the OHL, your goal is not probably originally to play in the CIS, right? Some of the players it is, but for the most part, they want to try to make the NHL, and that's not super realistic for everybody. But there are a lot that get an opportunity to play pro, play in the AHL, East Coast League, or the NHL, right? But if you take the junior route, so the Tier 2 route, the best leagues to get scholarships or to look for a lot of looks for these players is going to be in Canada. It's going to be the BCJ, which is going to be the BC Junior Hockey League out in BC, obviously. The Alberta Junior Hockey League is very good. And then in our area in Ontario, the OJ, which is the Ontario Junior League, or kind of Toronto area, does very, very well for scholarships. And then the CC, which is kind of the Ottawa area, so Brockville and Ottawa and all kind of that area there, they do great as well for, BC would probably be the best, and then Alberta, Manitoba a little bit, and then Ontario, would be great. And then in the U.S., a lot of our...
That's for like an NCAA.
All NCAA,
scholarship.
And then in the U.S., the best leagues down there are probably the USHL, which is unbelievable for players getting looks. A little bit harder for Canadians to go down there. You got to go down a little bit later. So kind of that 18, 19, 20-year-old year. Mm-hmm. And then another league called the NAHA, which is the North American Hockey League, which is another, really good league for looks. But there's a lot of options and play. Parents can. I'm not going to bore everybody with all this stuff, but parents can check the stuff out online and research it a little bit or take a look at it. But what I'm getting at is, and I hope the goal, the kind of the goal of this podcast today was just there's a lot of options, and a lot of times we don't know those options, especially for kids in Adam or Pee Wee. We're not thinking ahead a lot of times to midget or junior, right? But kind of having an idea as they're getting older, what type of player my kid is he going to get drafted? Is he not going to get drafted? And then kind of navigating that a little bit, but being prepared before that happens, because some parents aren't, and they get to minor midget and like, oh my God, my kid didn't get drafted. Now what do I do? They have no idea.
People are getting their, email inboxes filled with different teams and camps, and that's another thing. There's a lot of camps popping up. I've seen like there's a camp here and a camp there, and some of them are great. Some of them, I don't know how much exposure they get at it, and they can be expensive and whatever. Yeah. But that's a whole different can of worms. But
I think that's a good
having
point.
A plan before.
Yeah, and real quickly on some of those camps are great, and you get really good exposure. You get really good opportunity to be in front of good coaches and good people. Some of them are cash grabs, so they're basically just $400 for a day, and you get 2 skates. Well, $400 could get you some private lessons and some good workouts. Like you may as well, so. Again, I think for parents, it's one of those things where you got to look at what you're going to get for the value of the money. If you got there's one camp I know that you and I just talked about. I think it's a 2.5 day camp. It's $400 or $500, but they stay there, they eat, and they're on the ice at least 4 or 5 times. It's all included. It's not bad. I mean, when you break it down, it's a pretty good experience. The OHL's backing that up. Hockey Canada, the IHF. It's got some legitimate people backing it up.
So basically, what you're saying is, if you take a step back, kind of look at the price, look at what you're getting, look who's supporting it. And then you can kind of make a decision based on that. And then maybe you talk to some people around you. But if you can step back and look at those things, there should be some red flags. If there's red flags, they'll pop up.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And, we'll probably, I know we've gone long here today, so we'll probably kind of cut it off. The one thing I want to leave parents and players with, especially parents, is don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses. So don't, you need to know your player, whether it's boy or girl, doesn't matter. But really focusing on what type of player they are, what type of person they are, first of all. If my son's a 16-year-old, pretty immature, really, really slight, not very physically strong yet, very dependent on my wife and I, then I'm not going to send him to the OHL, live with the billet family.
Yeah.
If he doesn't know how to brush his own teeth. You know what I mean? But you see it, like,
oh, yeah,
these kids can't make a sandwich, and parents are like, go have fun. And I had no food. Doesn't know how to make a sandwich, So, so I think there's, you got to know your player, right? And I know we didn't touch on the girls' side. The girls' side's a little bit simpler, where they're going to go through their minor hockey. If they're good, they're going to play AA, which is the highest level for girls, all the way through kind of Bantam and then midget, and then it's junior for them. And the PW, which is the provincial league for the women, is unbelievable for scholarships. And that's where most of the girls will play. Girls can go to play prep school for sure, and that's a really good option for them as well. But most of them will try to play in the PWHL and then try to get opportunities for scholarships there. And it's an unreal league. It's a real good scouted league. So again, we talked about it quickly, but with girls, if they put in a little bit of time at Atom, Pee Wee, Bantam, they're going to be able to separate themselves from the other girls pretty quickly just by putting in time and working out and doing their skill stuff. And they're going to get an opportunity for not for sure, but hopefully, right?
Yeah. It increases their odds
big time,
more so than say, yeah,
big time. But yeah, to kind of end the podcast, just for parents out there, I know it can be super cumbersome and really, really muddy waters to navigate as you're going through the minor hockey system, whether it's guys or girls, but really focus on not trying to keep up with the Joneses and focusing on your child and making sure that you're helping your child, become the best player that they can be, the best person that they can be. And help your player outfit themselves with the tools to be able to survive at the next level. And that means mentally, that means like little things. I talked to a parent today about it, carrying your bag. Why are you 10 years old and your mom and dad are carrying your bag? That's ridiculous. Tying your skates. Oh, they're new. They're too tight. He's fine. So you might have to muscle through a couple sessions with loose skates, tie your own skates.
Figure out how to tighten them up.
You want to go try out in AAA tryouts, and you're going to have your dad and mom come in and tie your skates? Beat it. No, not a chance, man. That's ridiculous. And then we wonder why kids get bullied. Well, come on. Dad's in there tying his skates every game. Like, give the kid a chance, right?
Kids are going to hold back on that one.
And I don't care if they're skates. I tell kids all the time to come to our programs. We really try to push them to tie their own skates, and not because we're trying to be hard on them. It's more, hey, mom, dad, we're going to save your fingers. Give us a week with this kid and he'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
And if your skates are loose, no problem. Come on the ice with floppy, loose skates. Let us know. We'll tighten them for you. No problem. But I want you to try, right? You're on the ice 4 days a week. You got 4 times to practice tying your skates, right? But like all those little things. So as we get older, like how to boil an egg, how to boil a chicken breast. That's not hard. Throw in water. It's easy, right? But like preparing these kids to be, as they get into men and women, to be able to fend for themselves and make, when they're making that next step, when they got that stuff in check, it makes it so much easier because those are little stresses that are going to hurt a player where they can't eat because they don't know how to make anything. They can't do their laundry. They don't have clothes because they don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to do anything on their own. And I think we really got to put our horse blinders on and work on our player. And at the end of the day, too, if you have the means, it doesn't have to be financially, but the means, somebody, find the right people to surround your players with, right? And try to open doors. If there's an opportunity to open a door at a private school or open a door at a training center or open a door, and be creative. You have no money. Dad just lost his job. Come to me. Say, hey, Dwayne, listen, we don't have the money to do your program this summer, but little Johnny's willing to clean the gym. Mitch, have we done this before?
Oh, yeah.
Tons. Like, we got kids cleaning dumbbells and barbells, and honestly, we don't really need them to do that, but we do it because they do it, man. They work hard. They clean the gym for us, and we pay them for it. It goes towards their training, and they're able to train at a bit of a discount. So my thing with any of the athletes we deal with is finances should never be an issue. Well, we can always find a way to make it work, right? We had years ago, I had a dad who was an unreal carpenter. It's like, no problem. I need some stuff done in my house, so we'll trade off some of this stuff, and I'll pay for his training, right? And like things like that, right? Like you can always be creative on certain things, and I think that's really, really important moving forward. Don't let there be any barriers that you haven't figured out how to take those down, right? And talking to the right people, a lot of times you're going to get, we've had businesses sponsor kids to train in the summer. We've had friends, families that have donated money for kids to train in the summer. You know, like there's been a lot of real creative ways that parents have found ways to make it work. You know, so don't be closed to looking outside the box sometimes on different ways that you can open doors for your, and that could be as simple as creating a shooting lane for your kid in the garage. You know, hey Johnny, I put up plywood, so now you're not going to wreck my drywall, and you can shoot away, right? Like, doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just helping these kids that love the game, and then kind of helping them kind of achieve their goals and keep pushing through. You know,
And that's why we're all here.
that's it, exactly. Well, thanks a lot, Mitch, and I hope Carl does okay at the next level.